Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another episode of Sending the Community with me, Hafiz Muhammad Umar. And for this first part of the show, it is a pre-record. And unfortunately, Ras isn't with me at the moment. And during this half of the show, I am delighted to be joined by another amazing person. It's Beth. Hi, Beth,
Hi, Mohammed.
and welcome to Sending the Community.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Listeners, as you will be aware, last month, November, was the Epilepsy Awareness Month, and Beth is somebody who has been advocating for epilepsy for quite some time. She is an epilepsy warrior, and that's what her Instagram page is called. So please do follow that. If you haven't already done so, you can also follow Sending the Community as well. Razan, I set this page up a few months ago, and Beth has also created a page called Epilepsy Warriors. We will be speaking to Beth very, very shortly. Before I come back to Beth, just to remind our listeners that there are a number of events taking place locally, amongst them on Friday evening this week, on Friday the 12th of December 2025. There is the fundraiser for Medina Masjid on Oak Road. And I know there are many of the fundraisers going on at the moment. Why am I mentioning this one in particular? Because the Medina Masjid, the mosque on Oak Road near Luton Town Football Club, is going to be um, renovated. They are doing lots of amazing works to extend the mosque, and within it there will be a specialist unit to accommodate for people with special education needs and disabilities, including those with hidden disabilities as well as those with visual disabilities. So if you can attend the event on Friday evening, it's at Crescent Hall. Tickets are available both through Inspire FM and also the mosque itself, as well as Beach Hill Post Office on Dunstable Road. So please do attend if you can. If not, make a contribution if you can at all. Um, right. So coming back to you, Beth, then please tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Beth, and I am 28 years old. Um, Maybe a little fun fact about me: I am one of triplets.
Oh, amazing.
So that's fun. Um, I, I mean, I have epilepsy. I have since I was 2 years old, and been diagnosed since I was 17. Yeah, I mean, I'm a black belt in karate. Yeah, that's just a little bit about me. I can't really. There's more to me
Now,
than that, but that's all I can think about now.
one of triplets and black belt in karate. That's interesting. What the other
Yeah,
two like? Are they also black belts as well?
no, no.
Can
They're
you
more
imagine?
creative than I am.
I think having a belt, a black belt is super creative. Wonderful. Um,
Like,
but tell us a bit about your early life journey then, please, because a lot of people are uncertain about epilepsy and how it manifests itself. Some people think perhaps it might be from birth. Others think, you know what, can start occurring at some point in childhood. For others, it
yeah.
might be during teenagers. Yet for others, it might be in adulthood. Um, how would you describe epilepsy?
Um, I mean, in a general sense, it's the synapses and the nerves in the brain don't work the same as other people, and that can be different depending what type of epilepsy you have and what seizures you suffer with. Me personally, I have generalized combined epilepsy, so I have generalized and focal seizures. So both ones where there's convulsions and loss of consciousness, and also where I'm still aware, but it's sort of like you're trapped. So the absence and the complex partial seizures. Um, but when I was younger, so I started having seizures when I was two, and the doctors put that down to febrile convulsions. Um, because I was an underweight baby. I had to be in the special care baby unit as a child, so they sort of combined it with that. They were like, well, she was an underweight, very underweight child, and I had to be in hospital, and that can happen to a lot of SCABU babies, so special care baby unit babies. to have febrile convulsions. But febrile convulsions, most people grow out of them by about 6 years old, and I obviously didn't grow out of the seizures. And yeah, the only thing I can put it down to was medical neglect, because any time that I would have a seizure, and I would even have 3 or 4 in a row, the doctors just kind of fobbed me off really for a long time, which it happens more than I think people think it does. I mean, I myself speak to a lot of people through my advocacy, and I do a podcast as well, and so many people have a similar experience where they've not been listened to or seen or heard in that sense, and it's taken a long time for them to be diagnosed, it's an awful thing, and it happens in many conditions, which is
Mm,
really,
mm, and thank you so much for sharing that with us. That is quite powerful, and unfortunately, as you say, that is a worrying trend nationally when it comes to getting a diagnosis
yeah,
um, of any condition. And the announcement from the government last week that some of those vital services are going to be cut back, and this assumption that some of them are overdiagnosis, there's
yeah,
no justice at all
I
to
totally agree.
some of the most vulnerable people in our communities who are, as you put it, warriors, and fighting all these internal battles on a daily basis just to be able to get up and get around and to be
Hmm.
able to access some of the daily services that most of us able-bodied people take for granted. And
Yeah,
we would have thought the government might have shown more of a compassion kind of um, response to the ridiculously long waiting lists. We're talking not even weeks or months, years
yeah,
um, to be seen by a specialist before getting any kind of diagnosis. And COVID, yes, we understand, was a big issue, but that was 5 years ago. The second pandemic was, in fact, that was almost 5 years ago. It was
yeah,
January 2021. And we just were hoping that the government would have been able to understand and not deal with the symptoms, but actually deal with the root cause of all these delays and stop
absolutely.
blaming people for having a condition rather than address what needs to be done to fast track the support they so
Yeah,
desperately need.
I agree.
And listeners, yeah, and listeners, if you have just tuned in, you are listening to Send the Community Show. I'm today joined by Beth, who is an advocate for epilepsy, and Beth uses her platform on Instagram called Epilepsy Warriors to raise profile of SCN, not just SCN, sorry, but epilepsy in particular, and to make sure that people with epilepsy are fully supported. It's one of a few platforms on social media, and Beth is doing a sterling job around that. And if you're thinking, hey, it's wonderful, let's just speak to Beth. Beth actually isn't from Luton, but tell us a bit about your hometown. You're a bit away from us.
So I, I'm from Doncaster. I've not always lived here. I've lived here for about 2.5 years. So I couldn't tell you a whole lot. I grew up in Barnsley, which is
Yeah,
not too far away.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, I think with Doncaster, I have worked with like local community officers and education officers to try and improve um, education around epilepsy. Because I think it's important. I think a lot of the time, especially with focal seizures, because they're not as clear. Like most people will know grand mal seizures because they are really scary looking, and the it's the sort of traditional norm of what epilepsy is. It's the big seizures, but I think as someone who can relate to both, I can see the fear and the stigma in both of them. And it's not to say one is worse than the other, but I think a lot of the time with focal seizures, they are the ones that go unmissed and unchecked, and especially with young children who are going through puberty and the hormones are raging, which also can contribute to seizures happening. I think it's important for teachers to be aware of the different signals, because I know when I was growing up, I would be told that I was ignorant, and um, that was not me being ignorant. I was actually having seizures, and I think it's a hard thing. It's something I still struggle with now, like the fact that I wasn't seen in that way. Like you'd say, I would say, I'm not ignoring you. I don't know what happened, and it'd be pushed that I was being ignorant. And I think a lot of young children who do have focal seizures aren't being recognised because of that. It's just almost like, oh, they're being disruptive, and I don't think teachers are trained enough to recognise different things. It's like with ADHD or autism as well. There's so many things that it can look like one thing, but it's actually another, and it's difficult. But then the child suffers, and yeah. So I've been doing a lot of that in my area to try and improve that.
Yeah, well done you. And I think some of that you do, feedback on your Instagram page as well. And there is an amazing amount of work you do there. And part of the reason why we have that here is because Beth's journey, it's whilst it's in South Yorkshire, it can be, a similar journey here in Bedfordshire and any other part of the country as well, because accessing those services is identical. Um, the waiting times, etc., education, healthcare is all very, very similar.
Yeah,
And so if you're listening here and thinking, actually, I live in Luton or in Milton Keynes or Bedford or Dunstable or wherever, how does that apply to me? Well, we will talk about how we can start the process of getting access to those services very shortly. Um, so that you said earlier that from the age of about two-ish, your parents might have noticed you having seizures, but there was
yeah,
this you know almost unimaginable delay
hmm
in your lifetime before you were able to get a diagnosis.
yeah.
I mean, obviously you were way too young to remember that early age. At what sort of stage did you start to notice, perhaps, you weren't being supported in the right way?
Um, I think probably 11 or 12 um is my
That's already
most.
the secondary school.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Um, I think it was just the way I was being spoken to by doctors and nurses. There was like a lack of empathy and almost like blaming, as if to find a way. As have I done something to cause this, or am I faking it? You know.
Mm,
Um. So that, but I think it was like a flash of, wait, this isn't right. Like I've
mm,
I'm in a vulnerable position. I've had a seizure, and instead of being supported for to be pushed for a diagnosis, I'm essentially being blamed and sent home, like, you know.
mm,
But then I think I just got on with it because it had been for so long, and even from a young age, even though I didn't necessarily notice, hang on, this isn't right, I'm not being supported in the right way, whether that be by medical professionals or family, and they'd be the first to say that, like, they didn't either. And I think that's a lack of knowledge and understanding, and I think that's a part of why I started doing what I'm doing. Is it is difficult, and there has to be that grace for other people, for family members and stuff, to know what the right thing is to do in any situation. um so I think it's important for people to want to have the knowledge of other conditions in order to better support the people around them. um but yeah, I think I just got on with it until I finally got my diagnosis. I just sort of
mm,
I felt very lonely. I felt alone and very isolated for a long time.
mm.
Yeah.
Take it you went to a mainstream primary school and secondary,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so for your exams then at GCSE level, um, were you given any examination access arrangements at all?
No.
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 Wow. We did a session on examination access arrangements back in September on this show, listeners. And if you'd missed that, you can always go back and listen to it again. That is so, so important. So if I use but as a case study here, perhaps, and you think, well, my child is exhibiting similar kind of traits here. Please, please, please speak to your school's Senko if you haven't done so already. Class teachers are wonderful. Ask them to either do the Senko. If not, go to your school website, and on it, the SCN policy or statement has to be published by law every single year. It has to be the current, up to date. Look at who the named person is for SEN, the SENCO, and if they aren't, ring up the school, ask them, book an appointment with them, and SENCO can do a lot for your child at school. And one of the things they can do is contact all subject teachers in the secondary school to determine whether the young person in that kind of case is eligible for examination access arrangements. And what that means is there are adjustments that can be made to make the exam process a level playing field for a young person with epilepsy or any other special education need or disability. So if you take, I don't know, sports, for example, and I play a lot of cricket, as many listeners will know, and if I went into bat without wearing my pads, for example, it would be at a risk of serious harm. And you've got to understand like that. So if you got an access arrangement, it doesn't make you any more special. It's just leveling the playing field. It's giving you a chance to be able to do your exams at the same level as your peers within the year. So that could include, again, depending on the outcome of the access arrangement assessment. If you don't have an education healthcare plan, you have to go through an assessment. If you have an education healthcare plan, that should stipulate what exam access arrangements you need. So you might be entitled to, say, 25% extra time in your exams. So if you set in 2 hour exam, you might get another half an hour. You might be entitled to a supervised rest break. What that means is, as Beth was describing earlier, if you are having a seizure, depending on the duration of that, if it's for a few seconds, sometimes it might last 10, 20, 30 seconds, sometimes it might last for a few minutes, sometimes a bit longer, then for that, if you are able to come back and you think, what, I've woken up, I'm fine, I want to carry on, then that time does not get taken out of your exam. That's what supervised rest break is. Or if you are working and suddenly you feel so tired, you're brain fogged, and you're thinking, actually, I need a bit of a relaxation time. Again, an invigilator can come and they can take you out of the examination room or the examination hall. Your time for the exam will pause. So if it was 20 minutes in and you need a supervised rest break, they can take you out. You might go for a walk for 5 minutes. And the conditions are you can't talk to anybody about your exam that you're doing. Come back, and then you can carry on. So 25% extra time, supervised rest breaks. You could have a prompt. Somebody might just come and say, hey, you're drifting off. Come on, back on the exam again, please. That's perfectly permissible. You could have, depending on the severity of your reading skills, if you're struggling to read the questions, somebody read the questions to you, or a computer software reading the questions to you. You could have a scribe, somebody writing for you if your handwriting is so weak. Again, this is through robust testing, by the way. There has to be a level 7 qualified assessor who does the independent assessment. It's not done by your school teachers. Again, the Senko can put you in touch for a referral or the exams officer, and you got to make sure you do all of that. And why am I saying this? Because Beth, you are amazing. You're advocating for some of the most vulnerable people in our communities. But unfortunately, every year we have a few individuals who slip through the nets, and
Yeah.
for some reason or another, that degree of accessibility is not made available to them. So please, please, listeners, make sure that you look into this. If you've got children in schools who are either going through the exams at the moment, whether it's SATs in Key Stage 2, whether it's GCSEs in Year 10 and 11, whether it's A levels, BTECs, HNDs, Q levels, T levels, whatever, make sure you actually look into examination access arrangements and again speak to the Senkos. So that's the education side. Once you manage to get through school, then what? Did you go into college? Did you go into employment? What did you do with yourself?
Yeah. So I did want to say that I do actually feel very privileged from my position that because even though I didn't get the support the whole way through my education, I still managed to get into university, and I did receive the proper help there. like you were talking about, I got extra time. I was able to be in another room. I was able to have somebody help to read the questions if I did have a focal seizure and I did want, like you say, to continue. And so I do feel very privileged in that way that I still did well on my GCSEs. A levels, not so much, but that was the time when I was getting diagnosed. So that wasn't as good, but still, there's a privilege there in the fact that I got into university and completed that degree. So
Congratulations, well done.
thank you,
Mm,
thank you.
and I think there is a growing number of universities who are actually looking into um, access arrangements.
Yeah.
I know in one of my previous schools, the university actually contacted me because we had a young person with dyslexia who was going to be starting the following September. And as
Hmm.
soon as the place was confirmed, they went out of the way. They invested in a laptop for him. They met with his parents as well. At the age of 17, 18, we seem to think, oh, now they're independent adults. Well, actually, you all need a parents and carers around for that ultimate advice and support. And
Yeah.
this young man went off to university, and all that was in place before he even started. Now, some of the bursaries, etc.,
Yeah.
to support that as well. It's very important to ask that question. Um, and then I guess the other thing is, accessing the community, that independence. So, what happens when a person with epilepsy is out and about, knowing the fact that there is a possibility of seizures? How does
Hmm.
that impact the independence then?
Oh, massively. I think it comes with a level of anxiety for sure. I always, whenever I leave the house, I'm like, right, have I got everything that I need? Have I got my identification cards or my medical ID, necklace or bracelet? Because there is that fear of, oh, I'm going to have a seizure. What if nobody notices? What if, so it definitely does strip your independence away. But I think that also it depends on the level and severity of your seizures and you, if you have any other conditions. Um, but yeah, it does. It there's so many implications more than seizures. I think is what a lot of people with epilepsy would say. Like seizures is the obvious one that we deal with and we struggle with, but there's so much more to it that is probably worse to deal with, like the depression, the as you say, the independence, the stigma, those things those things have a more lasting impact on I will say from my experience anyway. Yeah.
Mm, And thank you so much for sharing them with us. Um, and then what about getting involved in leisurely activities? So whether it's sport, art, music, drama, etc. Have you been able to enjoy life to the fullest outside a structured, formal, educational kind of setting, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, yeah, I've played rugby. Like I said to you, I'm a black belt in karate. I enjoy doing creative things, so pottery making and just spending time with friends or doing go-karting, which there's things there that go-karting, if anybody's listening with epilepsy, just be careful. If you've not 6 months free of a seizure, don't go-karting. Or try and have a look at the legalities of whatever place you're going to for go-karting. Sorry, I just thought I'd say that. I don't want to for it to be
Uh,
everyone with epilepsy go-karting because it can be dangerous.
uh,
But obviously go-karting if you can
mm,
because it's
mm,
fun.
mm,
So
mm,
yeah, I mean, again, I think I do feel privileged in that way.
mm,
That, and I know that I'm able to do a lot of things that other people aren't. So even though I have struggles, I know that I I am fortunate in the situation that I'm in and what I'm able to do.
mm,
And because it's not, I want to help people in the UK, but I want to help people all over the world because I think of certain places in the world that there's not even access to epilepsy medication. Like Uganda, I've spoken to a lot of people in Uganda that have trouble even having access to medication.
Mm.
People in Canada that have trouble with people in the medical system. There's so many things, and I think it's important to take care of your like community, and I want to look after the people that I directly know or that I speak to. But for me, I think it's everybody all over the world with epilepsy that I want to help.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. But and you're doing an amazing job. And
thank you.
listeners, it's Beth from Epilepsy Warriors. If you're on Instagram, please look her up and follow her. And Beth, it's been an absolute pleasure having you with us. Thank you so much for
Thank
taking the
you.
time to join us. We are
Thank you.
headed to a short break now. And please, listeners, do join us straight after this break. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.